So today we'll start with a bit of mindfulness of the breath meditation, and then I will say a few words in terms of motivation. So just kind of follow along with my words and try to generate such a mind. Yeah? Okay. So please get into a comfortable meditation posture. And then scan the body from head to toe, trying to identify any areas of tension that we're holding. And if you do notice there's some tension, then just release it. If there's an area of a bit more tension that's harder to release, then you can imagine breathing into that area of your body. And then as you exhale, you release the tension with the exhalation. So now, whereas in previous days we've been using the rising and falling of the abdomen as our area of focus, today we'll try something else. So focus on the upper lip, between the upper lips and the nostrils. And then you'll notice as you breathe in and out, then there will be some sensation associated with air passing over the skin. But the other points of the meditation are the same. So you can count the exhalations and try to remain focused by especially trying to identify the very split second when the inhalation becomes the exhalation and so forth, and the exhalation becomes the inhalation. And we'll do this for another 4 minutes. So now, please adjust your motivation in this way. First, just consider how wonderful and how amazing it is that we have, every one of us has this precious human rebirth. Which is so rare. And so meaningful. With it, we can accomplish basically anything we want. We can accomplish a good rebirth in our next life. We can accomplish the state of liberation from all of samsaric suffering. And we can even in this very body attain the state of complete and full enlightenment. And so now, seeing its rarity as well as its preciousness for accomplishing our temporary and ultimate goals, we make the firm commitment to make best use of our lives. By training and developing our minds so we can quickly achieve our highest state of potential. So make that firm determination. Then think, although we have this precious human rebirth, well, we're not going to have it forever. We definitely must die. But the time of our death is completely unknown. We could even die today. And at the time of our death, the only thing that will matter is the virtuous imprints that we've been able to collect during this life. And all of our friends, all of our possessions, our reputation, even our own body, none of that goes with us to the next life. Then seeing that after this life, the mental continuum will go on to take another rebirth, and recalling the unbearable suffering of beings in the lower realms, even animals we can think of if we have trouble accepting the hell and preta realms. Seeing the unbearable suffering of the lower realms and seeing that the cause for rebirth in the lower realms is non-virtue, and the cause for taking rebirth in the higher realms again is virtue. Then we make the firm commitment to abandon all non-virtue and accomplish as much virtue as we can. So make that firm determination. Then contemplate that if we are successful in that practice of abandoning non-virtue and accomplishing virtue, we will be able to get another good rebirth in our next life. However, even another good rebirth is not sufficient, because we'll have to eventually die again and even in the so-called good rebirth of a human, we still experience so many problems, so many unsatisfactory situations. And so seeing the drawbacks of not only rebirth in the lower realms, but also rebirth in the higher realms, generate the aspiration to be free of this entire cycle of rebirth, uncontrolled rebirth due to our afflictions and karma. But then we see that even if we are able to free ourselves from the ocean of samsaric suffering, we are only one person. And even if we attain liberation ourselves, there will still be countless sentient beings who, just like us, want to be happy, just like us, want to be free of suffering. And have many, many, many times been our mother, our father, our husband and wife, have been extremely kind. And therefore, now that we're in a position, having taken this precious human rebirth, which gives us the opportunity to become enlightened and be in a position where we can work perfectly for the benefit of others, then we set that as our aspiration. So that in general is our aspiration in life. That we will train and practice such that we can attain the highest state of perfect enlightenment. So we're in a position to benefit beings in the best way. And in order to do that, we must learn about the various practices, the various ways of training the mind. And that is why we've come to this lecture and meditation today. And so now please think that whatever positive energy we create in our time here together may only become the cause for all sentient beings, vast as the vastness of space, to be completely freed from all their suffering and abide in the state of perfect enlightenment as quickly as possible. Okay, so come back to the room. So the meditation we just did, it's called a scanning meditation. So all the points that we've covered thus far in these lectures the past couple of days, we went through, and in a brief way, we scanned through the various topics, and then at each of the points, we made a kind of determination. Yes, you guys noticed that? Okay. So in general, what we just did is very good to do right when we wake up in the morning, before we check our, messages or anything like this. Then we can just sit quietly, get some mental stability by doing the mindfulness of breath meditation, and then set our motivation for the day like that, going through the various points. Starting with the precious human rebirth, and then impermanence and death, the relative suffering and happiness of the types of rebirth, the faults of samsara, and then bodhicitta. Okay? Okay, sorry, I know I'm sounding worse than yesterday, but yeah, maybe I'm feeling better. I'm not sure. Okay? So, yesterday where we were in the text, we're on stanza 9, where we were talking about the general faults or the drawbacks of samsara, or the cycle of uncontrolled rebirth due to our karma and delusions. Yes? So we were talking about, I think we had gone through the eight types of suffering and the 3 types of suffering, right? But just to be complete about it, there is also the 6 types of suffering. So, and remember, we were talking why there is such this emphasis on suffering, and why was that? Because, unless we see the drawbacks and faults of cyclic existence, then we won't aspire to the alternative, the state of liberation. That's 1. But 2, when we then try to understand or meditate on compassion, which is the wish that others be free from suffering, then the more detailed and clear a picture that we have about the way that living beings are suffering, then we'll be able to generate compassion that much better for them. Okay? So anyway, the 6 types of suffering then is the suffering of uncertainty. So this is related to impermanence. So our relationships, our status, our possessions, all these things, there's no certainty in them. There is no kind of stable state. So when we think about our relationships, then friends, loved ones, romantic partners, maybe you all have experienced, they don't last. And then even various status or possessions, all these things. There's a quotation in the Vinaya, the text on monastic discipline, where it says that all meetings end in separation. Everything that is collected together ends in dispersal. Everything that is born, or everyone that is born, dies. And everyone that attains a higher state, an exalted state, then will eventually fall. So, yeah. The next type of suffering or drawback of samsara is the suffering of no satisfaction. So here, anything that we have experienced, then it brings some temporary benefit, but that is never enough. So whether it be pleasurable sensory experiences, let's say eating a very nice meal. We had a nice dinner last night, but then in a few hours, again, we're hungry. We mentioned yesterday the goals that we set for ourselves. We want to, buy 1 car, or get, 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, whatever it is, yeah? Then we, most of the time we don't reach that goal, but even if we get it, then we set another bar, another goal. So this type of satisfaction is very elusive. Then the 3rd type of suffering is the fact that we have to abandon our body over and over again. So Nagarjuna, in his letter to a friend, he says that, if we were to stack the bones from all the skeletons that we've taken rebirth since beginningless time, they would reach higher than Mount Sumeru. You understand? If we, were to collect all the milk that we've drank from our mother's breast, it would be greater than the great ocean. If we were to similarly collect all the tears we've cried when our loved ones have passed away, it would also be greater than the great ocean. And if we were to collect all of the sludge that we've eaten when we've been reborn as worms, it would also be greater than the great earth. Understand? So, this one, you see, we didn't get into it too much, but you see, in the traditional texts, when they talk about, past and future lives, the point is that a moment of mind has to, or anything actually, has to arise from a cause that is concordant. Kati, your translator isn't here today. Suffering. Concordant. So, like for example, a lemon tree must arise from a concordant cause of a lemon seed. Okay? So, and a moment of mind has to arise from a previous moment of mind. And so then, when we go back to the first moment of mind, when we still were in our mother's womb, then that moment has to have arisen from a previous moment of mind, which is the last moment of our previous life. So, I don't know how satisfactory that type of reasoning is, but that is what is there in Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika. So, in that way, then mind has no beginning. Samsara has no beginning. And so, thinking in that way, it should really lead to a sense of disgust in having to take another rebirth, uncontrolled rebirth in samsara. Because actually what's even worse than having been reborn in samsara since beginningless time, see, if we don't abandon the cause of samsara, then the amount of rebirth that we will take in the future will be even more than that. It'll be endless. Huh?
Samsara no beginning, yes.
Yeah.
But end will be or not?
What's that?
End of samsara will be or not? But we try to end samsara.
Yeah. So this is actually it's a difficult point that's debated in the monastery. And there's different views on this. But what is clear is that your individual samsara can be ended. Many people have attained liberation, so their samsara has ended. But whether there'll ever come a point when all sentient beings will be enlightened, that's very difficult. But see, it's almost like that doesn't matter. What matters is your samsara can come to an end. So you should work on that one. Okay. So then, yes. So then the fourth type of suffering is the suffering is related to the third. The suffering of having to take rebirth again and again. So every time we die and we haven't attained liberation yet, we have to take another uncontrolled rebirth. Okay? And then there is the fifth type of suffering, the suffering of falling from high to low. You know? Yes, you understand? And then the sixth one is the suffering of ultimately having no companions. You know? No companions. We are, yeah. Okay? Well, not okay, but do you understand? It's not okay at all. Okay. So,
What is companions? What does it mean, companion?
Companion is like a friend, a partner. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, as Shantideva says, that, you know, due to the attachment that we have for our loved ones, we won't meet them again for many countless eons. You know? Okay. Alright. So we're on stanza 10. What's wrong? Is it okay? Huh?
Not sure, maybe you can translate for Kate. Sure.
Oh, nice. Okay, so stanza 10. When your mothers, who've loved you since time without beginning, are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Okay. So, we touched on these stanzas even on the first day. So, in general, there are two main methods to generate this altruistic mind of bodhicitta. And remember how we were saying that the primary obstacle to generating this altruistic thought is the mind of so-called self-cherishing, which holds us, you know, remember we did the third party observer, where we're just one person and, you know, others are countless. And when we think in that way, we definitely are able to see that others who are countless in number are more important than the one. But when we think that we're that one person, and when we look at our own actions, then actually most of our actions and things that we do are solely for our own benefit, or maybe for the benefit of a few close people. Yeah? So, since the main obstacle to generating this thought of bodhicitta is the self-cherishing mind that holds us to be more important than all others, then the two basic strategies to overcome the self-cherishing mind is to either raise our level of concern for others or bring our own excessive sense of self-concern down to something more realistic. Okay? So these two ways of generating bodhicitta, the first one, which is described in stanza 10, is what's called the 7-point cause and effect instructions. Okay? 7-point cause and effect instructions. Okay? So they are recognizing that all sentient beings have been our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness. Then step 4, it's called like love through the force of attraction. And then great compassion. And then number 6 is the extraordinary aspiration. And number 7 is the actual bodhicitta. Okay? So the first 6 steps are causes, and the result is bodhicitta. Okay? So here, it's actually worth saying, in all of the teachings contained in this text, the most difficult thing to realize is this fact that all sentient beings have been our mother. Because in order to do that, we need to get some insight into past and future lives. Nonetheless, I'll just describe how this 7-point cause and effect instructions, how it would be done. Okay. So anyway, to get that realization that all beings have been our mothers, then we combine it with what we just talked about in terms of past lives, right? And actually within samsara, every type of rebirth doesn't necessarily have to have a mother, but they birth from a womb and birth from an egg does need a mother. But there's other types of rebirth, like actually when we're reborn in the hell realms, it's not that we emerge from a womb, we just show up in the flaming cauldron. Okay? But in any case, you see, since time is without beginning, we've had countless numbers of rebirth from a womb and from an egg. And each of those rebirths, we have had a mother. Okay? All right. Yes. So then the next step, anyway, so you think about in that way, and then actually in the actual way to meditate on this point, you first start with your own mother from this life, and then consider that she has been your mother not only one time, but countless times. And then you consider your father, and you think that your father has also been your mother, not just once, but countless times. And then you gradually build out from that. Maybe, then go to your, brother or sister, your various friends, and so forth. So this is actually an important point. Although we're trying to gain a realization of like all sentient beings have been our mother, see, this all sentient beings is very nebulous. Like a cloud, means you can't grasp, right? Where are all sentient beings, So to do it from a specific, one individual, and then build up to 2 individuals, 3, 4, and then, 20, 50, then you gradually build up to all sentient beings. Because if you just try to start with all sentient beings, it will lack the specificity and the detail that is needed for the actual realization of it. You understand? Okay. All right. So step number 2 is then remembering their kindness. Remembering their kindness. Maybe I should mention first, because sometimes in a big crowd, then some people, maybe their mother, died when they were young and they were raised by someone else, or they were, yes, things like this. So here, the use of the mother is just an example, because in general, the mother, for most people, fortunately, is the one that we can see has shown the most kindness to us, right? But if you had a problematic or maybe no relationship with your mother, you can exchange for the person in relation to whom you feel the kindness was the greatest. Okay? And what is that kindness? Then, you can consider even from the time of the womb, then, the mother took care, went to the doctor, got all the examinations, ate the right foods, these kinds of things. Then, experienced a lot of pain giving birth to us. And then when we were an infant, slept very little. When we cried, the mother would come and give us the bottle or change the diapers or all these things. Then as we got older, then educated us, took us, dropped us off at school and these various things. And then, provided for us both materially and with her affection. And then even now I know this in relation to my own mother, but when I came traveling and was going on retreat here in Asia, then my mom took care of a lot of logistical things, that enabled me to go on retreat and be out of contact for a while, right? So, you understand? So here you make it particular to you, and it's very good to think about the specific levels of kindness that your mother has shown you. And then after you've done that, then you consider that she's done that not just one time, but many times. And then build it out again with, your father. Since your father has been your mother many times, your father has shown you that level of kindness many times. Excuse me. Sorry. Edit that out of the video. I'm joking. Okay? And then, third step is developing the wish to repay that kindness. Okay? So here, even in the world, with worldly people, right? We would consider it, even people who've never come to these kinds of lectures before, we would consider it to be very selfish if, sometimes you hear of, celebrities who make it big, and then they have a totally bad relationship with their mother, and, their mother is quite destitute, and, destitute means poor, and, they just kind of abandon their own mother. And we consider that to be very shameful. Yes? The rapper Eminem had such a relationship with his mother. Okay? Anyway, so after we've received so much kindness from this person, then, if the own child doesn't take care of the parents, then, who will, right? So, yeah. Then the fourth step, this love through the force of attraction, or Yeong Jampa, right? Actually, it says in the text that this comes naturally from the first 3 points. When you consider that beings have been your mother, you remember their kindness, and you have a wish to repay their kindness, then, love through the force of attraction means that you hold them to be near dear and lovable. Basically, that you care whether they're suffering or not. You know, it matters to you. It's of consequence to you whether they suffer or not. Because normally what we have, we kind of divide living beings out there into three categories. You know, a few loved ones that we care whether they're suffering or happy. And then we might even have some, troublesome people, maybe even enemies, that we don't care if they are, happy. And actually we might be happy if they're unhappy. Does that happen? Maybe not now, but it does happen in general. But the vast majority of living beings out there, we have utter indifference. We don't care whether they're suffering or not. It's it's not my problem. Like that, right? So here, in this way, meditating in this way, then we come to see all beings as someone that we, it matters whether they're happy or suffering. Okay? All right. So then, the fifth step is compassion. And as we were saying, compassion is the wish that others be free from suffering. Okay? So here, we should relate it to all of the 6 types, the 8 types, the 3 types of suffering that we thought about in relation to stanza 9. And here it's important because if our understanding of suffering is just limited to the so-called suffering of suffering, and that's the easiest. We see someone who's destitute. We see someone who's sick. We see an animal who is been hit by a car. These kinds of things, right? Then it's easy to generate some level of compassion, right? But Donald Trump, or someone, or to put it in another example, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, here in India, you hear about these terrible crimes against women. In Delhi, there was a woman who was raped on a bus, and then, we can have compassion for the victim, but it's harder to generate compassion for the perpetrator of the crime. Yeah? So here, we have to understand that, these kind of violent negative actions that sentient beings do, it's because of their own deluded minds. It's because of their own afflictions. So, there's a saying that from Shantideva that when someone hits us with a stick, right? It's actually the stick that has harmed us, right? But we don't blame the stick. We blame the person wielding the stick, right? Because they're in control. But actually, when harm like this is perpetrated, then that being is in turn just like the stick, being wielded or is as the instrument of his or her afflictive emotions. You understand? We'll get into this a bit later. Anyway, it's okay? get into this later when we talk about patience. But yeah. Anyway, love through the force of attraction, and then compassion. Compassion, which is very encompassing of not just the compassion with relation to the suffering, but ultimately, to have compassion for beings that they are under the control of their karma and their deluded minds, their afflictive minds, So then generating the wish, may these beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. But then that leads us to the sixth point, the extraordinary aspiration. Okay, so here, this is what distinguishes the so-called Mahayana practitioner from those just working for their own personal liberation, right? So, to go from the thought, may all sentient beings be free from suffering, and then step number 6 is, I myself will lead them to be free from suffering. You understand the difference? So in the traditional texts, there is a example that they use, which is maybe a little bit politically incorrect, but it's okay. So the thought is that there is a child who falls into a cesspool, like a sewer. A sewer. It's where after you flush the toilet, where that water goes. Okay? So, anyway, it's a pool like this. And then the mother is there. But you see, the mother can't swim. So the mother has this wish, or, may someone save my child. May someone save my child. Right? And it's a very strong wish. But since she doesn't know how to swim, doesn't jump in to save. Then the father does know how to swim. So then not only has the wish, may someone, or may my child be saved, but takes on the personal responsibility, dives in, and saves the child. You understand? So that difference of taking the personal responsibility to freeing these sentient beings from their suffering is the difference between those desiring just personal liberation and those aspiring to Mahayana. Because even the so-called arhats who've attained personal liberation, they have that thought perfectly. May all sentient beings be free from suffering. If you have done a Vipassana retreat, they meditate on this, the metta bhavana. May all beings be happy. So that's there. But what's missing is I myself will cause them to be happy. I myself will liberate them from their suffering. Okay? So, how then do we generate this thought? Well, see, okay. When we're enlightened, okay, let's take the Buddha, okay? When the Buddha was enlightened, he then was able to guide and liberate, many living beings, his disciples, okay? And so, if you look in the Jataka tales, which describe some of the Buddha's past life stories, the first, when he gave the first teaching in Sarnath, there were 5 disciples. And those 5 disciples actually, in many lifetimes ago, they were this kind of malevolent spirit that the Buddha, when he was still training on the path, offered his own blood. He gave his own blood to these 5. And then due to having set up that karmic connection, then when the Buddha was enlightened, those 5 that he had fed his own blood before were then able to be reborn in, as his first 5 disciples. You understand? And similarly, we talked about Shariputra, Moggallana, all these other ones. You'll see in many of the past life stories, they were, friends, or they were also students of the Buddha when he was still training on the path. Okay? All right. So, similarly, let's fast forward to when you become enlightened, right? So, there will be countless, and there are countless beings, even in this world, you see, that there's certain karmic connections that you have with people that others don't have. You understand? So, then when you become enlightened, you will also have people in your retinue, or as your disciples, that you'll lead to enlightenment. Right? You guys understand this? So what this means is, you see, why we need to take personal responsibility is because countless beings have attained enlightenment in the past, but yet there's still beings who are suffering. You understand? Right? So what that means is, each of us, because of our uncommon karmic relationships with people, there are going to be people that we and only we will have the ability to guide to enlightenment. So in this sense, it's almost like they're waiting for you. You understand? They're waiting for you to become enlightened. So then, this should really bolster our own taking responsibility to do. Okay. That's step number 6. Then, as we mentioned yesterday, I think, so although we have that wish, then I myself will free sentient beings from suffering and lead them to the state of enlightenment. We then look at our own situation now, and we see that we ourselves are suffering, we ourselves are deluded. We ourselves aren't even free from suffering, so how can we do that to someone else? Okay? Then we consider, the qualities of Buddha, the qualities of the enlightened state, and say, okay, if I'm able to attain that state, the state of my highest potential, I'll have all the skills, all the knowledge, all of the power to benefit sentient beings in the best way. So, that's what I'm going to do. And then one generates this wish to attain, therefore I will attain enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. Okay? And that mind is the mind of bodhicitta. That is the cause of the 7, the first 6 are the causes, and then number 7, the actual bodhicitta, is the effect. You understand?